Stifler, ask everyone to rate their looks on a scale of 1 to 10. Go ahead, Jasmine.
So we got into this last time. I think I have an issue with the 1 to 10 measuring scale, so we could get into that again. I think it's juvenile. I said last time it's fickle, it's whimsical. It's just not a way that I ever rate anybody else, so why would I rate myself that way?
Shania, what about you?
A 6.
I think like a 5.5. I've had a lot of facial trauma, and I think that's really brought my confidence down.
That's just heartbreaking. You're like so cute. I'm just saying 10 again.
I was gonna say 6, but now the literal model has said 6, so I feel like I gotta knock it down like 5.5.
Hey, 8.
Like confidence.
All right, there you have it. I give myself a 6.9 on a good day, I guess. I don't know. Thank you, Stifler, for the question. I do need to wrap up here pretty soon, but maybe we can. I don't know how much I want to. What was the primary thing that you object to when it comes to this rating thing?
I don't rate people that way. So like, for instance, why not rate people between 1 and 50, right? You could get more precise, but it's just dumb to get to that level of precision. So for me, the 1 to 10 is too much. Why not? Like, why wouldn't you rate someone between 1 and 1,000 or 150? Because it's too, so I don't walk around and go, is that an 8 or is that a 9? It literally reminds me of like MySpace days. I just might say how old I am, 28, that we used to do this on MySpace in middle school. Since then, I've never heard anybody talk about people this way. Like, he's an 8 or he's a 9. I just go, oh, that person's attractive. I see how that person's conventionally attractive.
Well, I think in like a common conversation, it's not something that would come up, but like you can have a sense of where someone falls when it comes to their attractiveness.
Sure, but I don't think that's usually on this 1 to 10 scale. That's the issue. So I may, and that's where people have differences. Like, I think me and some of the women, I could be like, oh, I think he's more attractive than that guy. And they might say, oh no, I like skaters. He's my type. You know, there's so much that goes into this. So that's why I don't think that the 1 to 10, it makes it seem like it's more objective than it is. And while there is an objective. No, there is an objective component to beauty, but there's also a subjective and cultural, right? They've done studies where people in like Africa have different preferences for waist to hip ratio, BMI. Then they move to the UK, and over a few generations they start to match the preferences of the UK. So there is a cultural even like 15 years ago nobody liked big tits and big ass, and now Kardashians.
That's a lie.
I think that men have always liked big boobs.
I
don't think that's new.
Trust me, as a girl who is flat-chested.
Yeah.
I think the standard of beauty, we can say, has changed throughout history. Can we not say that? Like, and in cultures, like in India, people like big ankles. I don't know if you ever saw that Oprah episode, but people like different things. In some parts of the country, in some parts of the world, being seen as too skinny is not. Like, if we even look at art, like if we look at the statue of Aphrodite, who was the most beautiful woman anyone could even conceive of. If you look at her now, she has like rolls. She doesn't have big tits. Like look up the
She's
statue.
got a healthy body fat percentage range. Okay?
Look up the statue of Aphrodite.
I've seen the statue.
I know she's not. That's not the ideal woman's body in 2023.
Well,
if we were going to depict Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, we wouldn't draw her that way, and we wouldn't depict her that way anymore today. Nobody's getting plastic surgery to look like that statue. So I'm saying there's obviously a cultural component, there is a subjective component, and there's an objective component. And because of those things, I don't think that the 1 to 10 scale, I think, again, it's juvenile. It makes sense when you're 12 and you're like with your friends, like, he's an 8, he's a 9. But I don't know, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. Do you guys walk around and look at people that way?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
No.
And I will say too, I think it's really dependent on like the day. I feel like some days I would literally be like, wow, I'm a fucking 10. I look amazing. And then some days I'd be like,
I look like a sea creature, yeah.
like 5 at the best, maybe. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's kind of silly too, but like we do it here. So yeah, I just do it.
Well, I guess, okay, do you consider yourself like a 10, or you just choose to not answer
No, I don't consider myself a 10.
Okay.
I do consider myself attractive. Now, there
Sure.
are days, like she said, that I actually am like, ew. And then there are other days I'm like, oh, I look good today. Like, that's my experience.
So first off, I think this idea that it's juvenile, I kind of reject that, because we all have our preferences when it comes to who we want to date. I don't think anyone here at the table would deny that physical attractiveness is incredibly important for both men and women.
So that's not juvenile. I don't think that having preferences is juvenile.
Sure, but I mean, the 1 to 10 scale is a sort of way of doing a assessment of someone's physical attractiveness, both yourself and also other people.
So when you see a girl and you like, oh, she's attractive, do you go into, is she a 1, 2,
No,
3,
I'm
4?
not. I'm not like breaking it down, but like
It's the breaking down component that I'm saying is juvenile. That's the component. So you're like, oh no, it's not juvenile to have preferences. Of course not. That's what I'm saying. I think it's totally fine to be like, I find them more attractive than them, but I don't go 8, 9. Ooh, he's 2 inches taller. Ooh, but I like his tattoos. Like it becomes weird.
It doesn't go through, and I would say it's probably the case for most men that it doesn't like go through our head like to assign a number when we're just passing a girl in the street or we're even in the conversation with a woman. But this idea that when we're having a conversation about it on a podcast, and if you do have like sort of if you attempt to have actual analysis of what's going on when it comes to dating, I do think it's valuable. I think it's useful.
Yeah, if you're a person that thinks that it's useful, you're a very different person than I am. That's all I'm saying. I think it's useful to think people are attractive or not, but if you're starting to put your prospects on like a scale and, oh, she's a 10, she's a 9, she's an 8, she's a 7, she's a 6.5, I don't think most rational adults are dating in that way.
Well, here's where it gets dangerous is in today's day and age, we have a culture of, there's from body positivity, where we are gassing people up to think that they are perhaps attractive when maybe they aren't. So
the reason
you need to, if you think that you are a 10, let's say, but you're not, whether you're a man or a woman, you're going to be disappointed with your dating prospects if you have a delusional sense of your own physical attractiveness. So that's why it's important. I think it's important that people are based in reality when it comes to their own self-assessment of their own physical attractiveness. So if you just like willy-nilly, oh yeah, I'm a 10, my looks are a 10, you're probably going to have some degree of entitlement when it comes to, well, if I'm a 10, thus I deserve a guy who's a 10.
I see what you're saying, but this is where that subjectivity comes in. So I'm on the internet. There are men who I am like their dream woman, like the big tit, small, like I am. They think I'm stunning. They think I'm a 10. I don't even think I'm a 10. There are some men who think I'm mid or average. So if I want to see myself as a 10, there are certainly men who will find me as a 10. I don't even think that of myself.
But do the men that you want view you that way?
I personally obviously like people when I'm their type. Like I like that compatibility. So yes, if a guy is really into like a lot of the guys that like me, they don't like fake tits. Like they don't like that. So and you can find a guy that. And there's some men that like small tits, and there are some men, but some men they're like, I love Middle Eastern women. I think they're the most beautiful. I'm not saying they are, but there are some. So what I mean is, what is really the issue with me being like, hey, I like men who I'm their type and they find me very physically attractive. Now, anyone who says you're a 10 out of 10, you're perfect, you have no flaws, that's not even human. That's bizarre. So that's not usually, I think, what people are saying when they're a 10 out of 10. But I don't think that like...
It kind of is, though. A lot of people have a overinflated sense of self. They think they're hot shit, but they're not. They think they're more attractive than they actually are. And invariably, they're going to be let down in the dating marketplace because they're not going to be able to secure for long-term commitment.
So this has been a common phenomenon in psychology for a while. It's called the self-enhancement bias. So you're right, but I don't think the self-enhancement bias is what's preventing people from...
It's one of various factors.
You can think that. I haven't...
Go ahead.
I don't feel like it.
Well, I think it's important to remember that everyone has unique preferences. It's like someone I may find super attractive, my best friend does not think is attractive at all. So that person they think they're a 10, they're great, they think they're super attractive, they will eventually find someone that also thinks that. Like I think that's a possibility, and it may be to the point where they get beaten down so much in the beginning that maybe they kind of have a little bit of a reality check and they now like, okay, maybe I'm not like a 10. But to someone they may be a 10 and someone's preference may match what they think of themselves, and in that case that's great. But of course that's really challenging to find, and it's going to be difficult for them if they just are walking around thinking they're a 10 all the time. But to someone they really may be a 10.
Okay.
I think
go ahead, Lauren.
Sorry. Well, I think I firmly believe that there is someone out there who thinks that you are gorgeous and is going to be attracted to you. I think that's definitely true.
Yeah.
But I think think where Brian's coming from and why having a sense of like self-actualization is important is that are you going to be attracted to that person, right? Because if you're someone who you're like you're single and you've been single for a long time and you meet someone and they find you beautiful, they're super attracted to you, but you think you can do better, perhaps there's a possibility that you can't. And
right.
No one wants to like quote unquote settle, but I think it is, having realistic expectations is kind of why it might matter, and not necessarily that we quantify how good looking we are, but just kind of like, what pool are you working with?
Right.
I think anyone who's like, I can do better because I'm more attractive than a person, I don't think that's not a nice person, and you probably shouldn't want to date them anyway.
I guess here's the thing though, when it comes to differences between men and women, is that I think it's really important you have, especially so for women, that you have an accurate self-assessment of your own your own physical attractiveness, is because men will put women, well, there's a variety of categories, but men are a little more flexible when it comes to who they're willing to sleep with. And if as a woman you're desirous of a long-term relationship, there are plenty of guys that you're going to deem really attractive that'll sleep with you, but they'll never give you commitment. And so if you start gunning for like a really top tier guy as a girl, you can get sexual access to him, but it's not a given that you're going to get commitment from him.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But so as a woman, like you can, in addition to not only having sexual access to men of whether it's status, whether it's physical appearance, because for men will sleep with women that they would, in terms of physical attractiveness, that they would never consider being in a relationship with.
Yeah.
However, I think it's pretty different for women. Like for women, in order for you to sleep with a guy, he typically has to be at least physically attractive enough for you to be in a relationship with him. Typically when women break rules when it comes to, sleeping with someone quick or whatever it may be, is he's just going to be really attractive. Whereas it's almost the opposite for men.
Or she's just super into him, like emotionally, like they have a wonderful emotional connection, and then that like draws a lot more women in, even just to like sleep with you. So.
And also everyone's attractive preferences are different, right? From, everyone here, if you have one guy, we may not all find him super attractive.
Yeah.
And so there's, like you said, there's someone for everyone type thing. Like it's not that it's easy to find that. It's definitely really difficult, but it's possible.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Sorry, well, I guess the issue is that women tend to be the gatekeepers of sex, but men are the gatekeepers of relationships. So the disparity there might be that, women, because we're, I guess, traditionally the gatekeepers of sex, what Brian is saying is that we're not going to sleep with someone who we wouldn't also date in terms of looks, but men have actually a higher standard for who they would date in terms of looks than who they would merely, for example, have a one night stand with. So you could have like an information asymmetry if you're going into a date or something where you might like be into the guy and want to date him, where he's not actually that attracted to you enough to have you around long term. He only wants to sleep with you. Which
so
would
to
be
get to the
bad
conclusion,
situation.
then you're saying that because of that, these women have an inflated sense of self because they think they can get that guy, but they can't because they're not attractive enough, but they don't know it because they think they can because he's willing to sleep with them. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you guys are?
No, what I'm saying is that as a woman, not every man who wants to sleep with you wants to be in a relationship with you, and it's important to be able to discern that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So
That can also go both ways.
Yeah.
Too. Absolutely. I mean, maybe typically one way or the other, but it's important to recognize that it can go both ways.
Word. Okay.